Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at Doctor Who Time of the Daleks from Gale Force 9. And this one was sent to me by them to check out. It is actually the second edition of the game. It came out a while ago. This is a reprint that should be available anytime now, if not already. And they swapped up the name or the doctors that appear in this version. Now you have the first Doctor, the fourth Doctor, the 11th Doctor, and the 13th Doctor. And you're going to be traveling throughout space and time to try to stop the Daleks from making it to Gallifrey. And for anybody who's a fan of the franchise, I think you'll like this. There's a lot of references and things in it. I will start this all off by saying myself, I am not a huge Doctor Who fan. I've watched some of it. I tried to get into it. I just really couldn't. And I will admit that some of the different seasons with the different Doctors are more interesting than others. I think I watched a couple, and I don't even know their names, but I watched a couple with him, and I think a couple with him. And that's pretty much it. So just want to let you know ahead of time that if I mispronounce anything or make any wrong statements on it, it's because I am not a huge fan, and I apologize for that. But it'll give you a look at what I think of the game for someone who's not a diehard fan. As I already said, if you are a fan, I think you're going to enjoy it anyway. But that said, we're going to get right in and take a look. So first thing we have here on the top is our rulebook. And it seems pretty straightforward. There isn't a lot to the actual game. It's a very simple dice manipulation game. There are some, or a lot I should say, of references to various episodes of Doctor Who and different races and things will come up over the course of the game. There's plenty of examples in here. I will admit that because I didn't know much about the source material, I did watch some how to play videos from Gale Force 9 and learned from that. So I didn't actually learn how to play out of the rule book. So I apologize for that, but I wanted to get some info from people who actually knew what they were talking about to make sure that I had everything right. So on to the next thing here, we have the main board. This is the time board, and this has, I don't know how to put it, I guess that's up. The path through time that you're going to be taking on your trip to Gallifrey. We have Earth on here. We have Skaro, where the Daleks are going to be starting. And then you have Earth past, Earth future, and Earth present. And these relate to these little notches that are on there. And then we have the various player dashboards for the different doctors. I think they're all the same, it's just graphic wise. They represent the different doctors on there. I think they're all the same on the back. But it doesn't really matter who gets what because you're going to be switching doctors throughout the course of the game. But depending on which one you start with, you may want to start with your corresponding board. And then everything else in the box is a mess because I flipped it over. They have a somewhat decent insert in here, but it's not made to flip the box over, obviously. So we're going to get these straightened out as best I can here. Alright, so we have a bunch of tokens down here in the bottom, all kinds of things. First one here is this, and I don't think it came with these bags. I think I put this stuff in these bags. So may have came with a couple. But the first thing we have are the Tardises. We have 4 different ones of those. They're all exactly the same. However, they come with these colored bases that you snap on. And those are going to be used to determine which one belongs to which player. And then we have our doctor models here. doesn't want to focus, but they're pretty detailed. Not bad for what they are. They seem to be plastic, somewhat sturdy, not that kind of rubbery plastic you get. So they got a decent amount of detail. And again, these have colored bases that can hook onto them to differentiate who is which. And these are actually like a soft rubber, which is nice, so it won't scuff up your paint if you paint your models. And I don't know which of the doctors is which, so I'm not going to try guessing on that, but again, pretty decent. There's a little bit of flash on the base here, but nothing major. Definitely enough detail for someone to paint if they were interested in doing so. I wish the camera would focus a little better on them, but I think you can see enough to get the gist of it here. I think all of these models that I've shown so far were already in the first edition of the game. I'm not sure exactly who was in that, but I know this one is new. Because she was not in the original version of the game. And this model's slightly different. I don't know if this was a prototype or what, but like the base of the model is definitely different. Where it looks like it's almost resin instead of plastic. I'm not positive on that, but definitely different material on the base. I'm not sure if they're all going to be that way. It could just be that this was an early copy. But there you go. Our next bag of goodies is more models. And these are the Daleks. First thing we have is the Dalek saucer, which is going to be used on the map here to represent your progress. And the Tardises are actually going to be on the map for the players. And then the various doctors will actually be off on separate tiles depending on where and when in the timeline they go. Then we have these Dalek models. I think they're kind of cool looking. These arms are bent on a couple of them, but nothing major. I think it just had to do with how they were packaged. They were just kind of stuffed in a plastic bag. But again, these are going to be put on the various locations if you fail your objectives. Does not want to focus, but you get 4 of the basic ones. I bet there's 5 of the basic ones. And then the 6th one is Davros, I think is his name. And if he comes into play, bad things happen, because if you get one more Dalek that's supposed to show up after Davros is in play, the game is over and everyone loses. It's kind of a co-op game in that respect, although you're still trying to be the first Doctor to make it to Gallifrey. So it's competitive and co-op at the same time. Then we have a bunch of progress tokens here. There's a whole bunch of sonic screwdriver charge tokens. We have some time anomaly tokens, which are going to be placed throughout the time track here. And if the Dalek saucer lands on that spot, it will trigger various events to happen. We get a whole bunch of cool custom dice. I think there are 3 of each of these colors, as well as I think 8 of the black. And the black ones have 1 of every icon on them, whereas the various color ones have multiples of certain icons on them to increase your chances of getting those. And you're going to be making up a pool of these various dice to solve the different dilemmas that come up throughout the course of the game. So for cards, we have the various Doctors. Now there are 4 Doctors included in the base set, but there are expansions to this game that add in other Doctors. I think they come 2 in a pack, so you could add on your favorite characters if they're not included in these. But these match up with the player boards and of course our models. And these are going to be the characters that you're picking from to play. And what would the Doctor be without some companions. So we have a variety of different companions that can be found throughout the course of the game. I believe each Doctor starts with a specific companion as well. But these companions can be found on Earth, if you're on Earth. Or alien companions, if you're not on Earth. And each one of these give you different abilities. Like the ability to swap out your black dice for colored dice. Or to re-roll certain colored dice. Some have other abilities in text here as well. Lots of cool things that you can do with those. And then we have, these are pretty much going to be your action cards. And they have this god-awful long name on there because it's a quote from the show. But everybody refers to them simply as the timey-wimey cards, which seems a little silly to anyone who's not a fan of the show, but I don't think we'll be calling them that. But there's all kinds of different things in here. Then these are basically equipment and items that you're going to get throughout the course of your adventures that you put on the various slots on your player board to give you bonuses for various things. So in this case, you can spend a couple charges from your sonic screwdriver in order to get an extra die. And down here's additional rules for those. There's a bunch of different kinds on here. Lots of rerolls in there. Those are an odd sized card too. I think they're smaller than a standard card. Yeah, because these are pretty much standard card size. These are a very weird size. They're not European size. They're not small size. Like mini cards, they're in between. So it's a very strange size card. I'm not sure why they went with those. Then we have these time anomaly cards. And like I said, these are going to be used when the tokens are on here, whenever the saucer ends up on the time with an anomaly. These are going to come up. There's a variety of different ones of these. They also have these little dialogue icons down in the corner. You can remove those if you want to make the game a little easier. The same goes with some of the other cards. There's those icons on there that can be removed to make the game easier. But these are pretty much bad things that are going to happen throughout the course of the game. And again, I think they're all references to things that actually happened in episodes of the show. Next we have is our location tiles, and there's a big stack of these, all kinds of them here. And these are basically all the different areas that you're going to explore throughout the course of the game. And you can see here, this is Mars, and both of them have a past and a future, and they pertain to these little sections over here. Canis, Tardis, all kinds of different places that you're going to go to in your various travels. And the way these work is that they're going to be actually face down until you travel. And you're going to roll this die whenever you want to travel. And it's got the Tardis on 4 sides, I think, and question marks on 2. And when you roll, if you get the Tardis icon, you get to draw 2 of these. Look at them both, decide which one you want to go to, and go from there. If you get the question mark, you just draw the top one and you go there. And then when these are put into play, you're going to draw from the next set, which is a huge stack here. This is just a little bit of them. But you have these dilemma tokens. And you're going to draw these, and they're going to fit into these little slots. If I can get this on the camera. They fit into these little slots here and line up. And then you decide if you want to go to the future or the... Well, in this case, they're both futures. But you get to decide which one you want to go to. Most of the time, it's there's future and far future. And depending on which one you go to, you're going to flip these over. And then the way they work is you have, say you wanted to go here. They already have these requirements. You're going to add these requirements to it for the current dilemma. You're going to add up your pool of dice depending on what you have from your current doctor, as well as your companions and any equipment upgrades you have. You're going to make a little pool of dice on your board here. Fill up these slots. You can only have a maximum of that many. So if you have more dice than that, you have to choose which ones to use up to that many. And then you roll your dice and you're trying to match these symbols, if you match all of the symbols, you complete the task, and there's a bonus that you get on here, the reward for completing the task. If you fail the task, there's a fail on here, tells you what happens, and as well as a Dalek gets put on that location. Pretty much the basics of that. There are a ton of these different dilemmas, and I won't show them all because there's really is a ton of them. They all have different fail objectives. They all have different events and things that occurred over the course of the various shows. And I'm not kidding when I say there's a ton. That's only a handful there. There's more. They're actually, I think my insert got warped a little. I can't even get them out. There's another stack. So yeah, there is a bunch of the dilemma tokens. And that's nice because, like I said, you're going to be drawn two at a time, and it'll change up every time the dilemmas with the locations mix and match, so it makes the game different each time you play. And then we do have a really nice storage insert for it, as long as you don't add anything to it. I think everything fits in here. If you start adding in the other doctors from the expansions, you may have to do something to adjust for that. I actually kept the punchboard tokens underneath to keep everything nice and flush at the top, so the cards didn't get all over. But everything that comes in the box, do a little short thing to explain how gameplay works, and then I'll come back and give you my final thoughts. Here we are all set up for a two-player game. We've chosen the 11th Doctor here. Our opponent here has got the 13th Doctor. We have everything else laid out that we're going to need. There's some dilemmas put on the different time periods of Earth. We also have our starting companion down here. For us, it's Amy Pond. We have our two timey-wimey cards that we're going to start the game with, and two charges on our sonic screwdriver. So the first thing you're going to do is a prepare step, and on this step is where you're going to generate two tokens for your sonic screwdriver, and you'll keep generating two of those on every prepare step, up to 5, I believe, in total. So these can be used to spend 2 of them to allow you to reroll a die, or you can spend 3 of them to change any one die to whatever facing you want. So that can be pretty useful. They're also used to activate the various timey-wimey cards you have. The next thing to do would be to uninstall any equipment. If you have any equipment on your board here that you want to uninstall to free up one of these equipment spaces, you can do that during this step. The next thing to do is to install equipment. So you look at your hand. If there's any cards in here you want to add to your equipment. In this case, we have the large scarf, which allows you an additional reroll if you're any doctor other than the 4th. If you're the 4th, you get 2 free rerolls. Or the Tardis memory bank, which allows you to, when you spend a black die to reroll your dice, you can choose one not to reroll. That's kind of nice. I think for this example, though, we're going to go with the large scarf. And we're going to spend 1 of our points to equip that. And this is also when you would dismiss any of your companions. If you want to free up one of your companion spots, you take the companion and you would send them back to their deck and they would get shuffled in. But in this case, we do not want to do that. And during the travel step, you're either going to stay at your current location if there's something to do there still, or you can move to another location with a dilemma that's already in play, or you can travel to a new location. To move to a new location other than Earth or a time anomaly, you're going to roll the Tardis die, which we already talked about. And in this case, we rolled the Tardis symbol. If you roll the Tardis symbol, you can move to any time zone on any location that's currently in play, or you can move to a new one by drawing 2 new locations. And we're going to look at them. And we have Nerva Beacon and Vortis. And we're going to take Tardis here. This one will actually go to the bottom of the stack. This gets put out into play, which I didn't leave any room on the area here for location. So we're going to put that right there. We're going to draw 2 dilemmas. And they get lined up like so. And then we have to decide which of the 2 time zone locations we want to go to. So we have a choice of the present or the past. We're going to try going to the present. You can look at the rewards here and see which your choices are, but we're going to go for the present. Had we rolled the question mark, we would just take the first tile and go wherever that is. We wouldn't get a choice. So we chose the present here. We're going to flip over our dilemma. It's the impossible astronaut. This has a diplomacy, a cunning, and a tactics icon on it, as well as the diplomacy and strength icon that we already have on there. Now the colors of these do not matter. You can get anything as long as you get those symbols. The colors are just there to remind you that if you're trying to get that cunning icon, you have a better chance of rolling it on the blue die. But that said, we're going to go on to our next step, which is the adventure step. And during the adventure step, the first thing we're going to do is to recruit a companion. And since we're not on Earth, we're going to recruit an alien companion. We got Susan. And, well, with the first Doctor, she gets a bonus. We don't have the first Doctor, so we don't get that. She's also linked with Barbara Wright. So if we go to Earth and look for a new companion, we can actually go get Barbara Wright. We don't have to draw randomly. Which is kind of cool the way those work. But she's going to give us a +1 black die and then a option to swap a black die for a green and another option to swap a black die for a blue. And then we also have a reroll of a black die. So we put her down here, but not up here like Amy is. She goes down below, leaving a space. And that's because she's actually not a permanent member of our crew yet. She's just a companion along for this adventure. We kind of skipped ahead and determined what our challenge was going to be already, so we know what we're trying to do here. The next thing is going to be to create our dice pool. So we're going to start with our Doctor. He gives us 4 black dice and 1 blue die. So we're going to start putting them up here in our dice pool slots. We have 4 black dice, 1 blue die. Amy gives us a green die. Susan gives us another black die. And that's our total. Now we have an option to swap out some of our black dice for specific colors. Because we have 2 negotiations, we might want to get some extra green in there. I think that's what we're going to do. Both of them allow us to swap for a green. So we can swap a black die for a green die. I think we're going to do that twice. Do we want to do that twice? Amy also allows us to swap one for red. I think we're going to swap one for red. And that's our total there. Amy allows us to re-roll a green die as long as she's with the 11th Doctor, which she is. She also allows us to flip one of our green dice to a negotiation, which was nice. We will probably make use of that. And then, of course, Susan has our re-roll of a black die. So now that we have our pool, we didn't exceed our maximum, so we're good there. We got to roll our dice and see what we can get. I'm going to try to do this on camera. Let's move these off camera so they're out of the way. I didn't leave myself a lot of room here. My camera angle is kind of limited. But there you can see what we got. We got a lot of science in there. We got some cunning. We got a run, which we don't need. So now we can start matching up what we want to keep. We want to keep that. We need one of those. We want to keep one of those because we need it. And we can start using the re-rolls that are granted by our stuff. So our large scarf here allows us to re-roll one of our black dice, which we're going to do. We got a fist icon, which we need. That helped us out. Susan allows us to re-roll a black die, which we're going to do. We got a diplomacy, which we needed. That's nice. And then Amy allows us to re-roll a green die, which we still didn't get, but her ability allows us to switch this to negotiations, which we needed. I keep saying diplomacy, but it's negotiations. Wrong game. So that works out for us. So then we look over here at what we need to fulfill, and I'm sorry this is small. Let me see if I can pick that up for you. This is what we're looking to achieve. And as you can see, we've got that icon, we've got that icon, that icon, we got our strength, and we got our, so we got everything we need. That means we're going to successfully complete that. Now, one thing to keep in mind when gathering up your die pool is if there is a Dalek on the location, you actually lose one of the dice too. That wasn't there, so I didn't mention it, but that's something to keep in mind. There's also time anomalies that can remove dice and things like that. The completed dilemma is going to get discarded. And we are going to gain the rewards for what we've completed here in the present. So we're going to move our TARDIS forward 1 space and draw a timey-wimey card. So we move forward 1 space. And we draw a new timey-wimey card, which is the Poet's Hat. It's equipment that gives us a +1 black die. That's kind of nice. And because we succeeded, we can promote Susan here to a full-time companion by moving her up. And then she stays with us permanently. Now, had we failed that mission, she would have been discarded because we would have been able to keep her. We would have suffered the penalties that were on here, such as discarding 2 timey-wimey cards, and we would have moved the Dalek ship 2 spaces forward. All bad things. It also would have put a Dalek on this and made it harder for the next person to try to complete a task there. Now, depending on what the options had been for the tests we needed to make, if we weren't sure we were going to complete it, we could always call for help, which would give us the option to ask one of the other doctors to come help us, and they get the choice whether to come to our location with us, in which case they have to discard a sonic token from or a timey-wimey card in order to move to our location. And because they're moving to our same location, it would also move the ship forward unless it was at a time anomaly. The nice thing about coming to help is we would have gotten to split our dice pool that we had however we wanted with the helping doctor, and then they can use any of their companions or equipment to modify the dice and help out. The other option is that they can help from afar, and in that case you can only give them 1 die from here. They can still use all of their stuff to modify that die, but they only get the 1 die. Here we are all set up for a 2-player game. Helping doctor would get 1 timey-wimey card. If they're helping from your location and succeed, the doctor also gains whatever the reward is. You can also remove an additional Dalek. So if there were 2 Daleks here and somebody came, we could remove 2. However, if you fail, if they're helping from afar, they have to discard a sonic charge or a timey-wimey card. And if they're at your location and fail, Dalek is added to the location, so you get 2, and the complete actions listed on the fail would apply to both doctors. So it's kind of a hit or miss if they want to help you or not. This is a competitive game, but at the same time there are co-op things. You either all lose or one of you wins. That's the way the game's set up. So you may want to help somebody to get those extra cards or to get that extra reward, but it's kind of a trade-off either way, because if you don't help them and they fail, everyone suffers the consequences. As far as the Daleks advancing towards their win condition. But that's going to end for our turn. It would move on to the next player. They would take their turn going through the same steps that we just did. Last doctor is gone. In this case, there's only the 2 of us. The Daleks get a turn. And the first thing they're going to do is that their ship advances 1 space. Daleks are going to do a victory check. If the ship reaches Gallifrey, the Daleks win. there are 3 or more Daleks on Earth, the Daleks win. Or if there is ever 6 Daleks anywhere on the board in play, and the 7th one needs to come out, the Daleks win. So you have to check for that. If that doesn't work, you check to see if the Doctors win. Any of the Doctors reach Gallifrey. In this case, no. You move on to next Doctor and continue on. And that's pretty much how play is going to continue. And it's a very simple game, really, when you get down to it. It's just building up your dice pool, making use of your equipment and things to re-roll and swap out dice, keeping track of your sonic charges so that you can activate various abilities, and going to the different locations to eventually advance yourself along the track. When the Dalek ship gets to one of these time anomaly spaces, you're going to draw an anomaly card, and it has a effect that needs to trigger off at that point. Some of them are pretty bad, so you kind of want to keep the least amount of those possible going off, so slowing down their new movement as much as possible as it goes is definitely the key. The thing that's worth noting is that at some point, either through a dilemma or a time anomaly card, you will be forced to regenerate. When that happens, you're going to swap out your current Doctor with the next evolution of the Doctor. In this case, we have the 11th Doctor. We would regenerate as the 13th Doctor because there is no 12th Doctor. So we're going to steal theirs. The 13th Doctor, the player was playing them, would regenerate as the first Doctor because it loops around. And then you go through any of the numbers you have. So if you have expansions, it'll allow you to bring in other Doctors from other numbers. But everybody's going to go up one, and whoever's the highest, which currently is 13th, will go back to the first. It's pretty much how the game works. You retain all of your companions, you retain all of your equipment, you just swap out your Doctor. So throughout the course of the game, that might happen a couple times that force you to switch into different Doctors. So you need to keep that in mind. But yeah, that's the basics of how the game goes. It's going to keep playing around in that same type of thing. You're going to be traveling to different locations, solving the dilemmas there by rolling dice pools, and then racing your way through time to get to Gallifrey before the Daleks do. And that's a look at everything from Doctor Who, Time of the Daleks, the second edition here. I didn't play the original edition, so unfortunately I can't tell you what has changed, other than I know the Doctors have changed. The addition of the 13th Doctor there, I'm not sure who they took out, or if even the other one stayed the same, but I know they have released a couple expansions to the old version, which I think are compatible with this, that add the various other Doctors. I want to say there's 4 other Doctors in 2 different expansions, as well as a couple expansions of companions. I am not sure if they're going to be re-releasing those if they're not compatible with this, so unfortunately that's something I'm not sure on, but they are out there and available. I'm pretty sure that at least the Doctor ones are compatible. The companion ones, I'm not sure if they changed up the cards any, so we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm sure someone at GF9 will let me know, but definitely, I think the Doctor ones are compatible so that you can swap and add in new Doctors. Let you start with new Doctors as well as regenerate into different Doctors and possibly add more players. I'm not sure if it ups the player cap at all either, but that's something to look into. Overall, though, it's a pretty simple concept game, building up a dice pool, rolling dice, trying to match up symbols. I think I have other games that are very similar. Firefly comes to mind, although you're not rolling dice, but you're adding crew to your ship to add symbols to match up to the various things that you need to overcome. One of the conflicts in that game is that everyone wants to play as Malcolm, the captain of Serenity, the Firefly. And this game overcomes that aspect in the fact that everybody gets to play the Doctor, which is kind of cool. And with the ability to purchase other Doctors and add in, it allows you to play your favorite. So whoever your favorite is, you can get that doctor, you can start as that doctor. Of course, you might not finish as that doctor because it may change throughout the course of the game, but that's just a cool aspect of it. I do have a couple minor nitpicks about components and things, but nothing major. The tiles are nice and thick. I think they're going to hold up well. They're pretty standard stuff. Though I will mention the fact that while they went through this, they have these cool slots that these fit into, and they have this neat little graphic. And while I'm holding it here, yeah, see it kind of lines up there, but a lot of these little arcs that go through do not line up with that, especially on the main board here, the ones that go around Earth. That's kind of just a weird nitpick. Nothing major. The other one is that these bases, while they look cool to differentiate who is what, especially that green one, does not stay on. So it drives me nuts. These ones aren't too bad. Some of them are kind of loose, but yeah, the green one, oh sure, now it stays on, but the green one does not stay on my figure, and it's kind of obnoxious. Also, the 13th Doctor in mine is made out of definitely a different plastic. It's completely a different color than the other ones, as well as the quality of it. That could be down to the fact that this was an early review copy and maybe she's not finalized. I hope that's the case, but something to keep an eye on. I'm almost positive that's the case, though, because it's different enough. I don't think that that was a production error. I think it was just a last minute throwing this together. And lastly, probably the biggest of all of them is that these timey-wimey cards, while silly to say, are just a very strange size, and if you are one of the people like me who likes to sleeve your games, finding sleeves that fit them are just going to be very difficult. And like I showed earlier, these are standard playing card size, like Magic the Gathering size, American Standard I believe it is, and then these, you can see there, are quite a bit smaller in both sizes. They're not quite American Mini. They're not European Mini. They're something in between. It's just a very odd size. And I looked through all of the different sleeves. I have tons of different sleeve sizes laying around, and nothing I have will actually fit those. So I have to look up and find out what those are, but that's something to keep in mind. I don't know why they went with a strange size for those. I guess they were trying to make them fit in the equipment slots on the player boards, but I think a full-size card would have done just as well on there. They might have had to change the artwork slightly, but I just can't see a reason why they went with a strange, odd size for those. But anyway, the game itself I actually enjoy, even as a person who's not a huge fan of Doctor Who. I know what Doctor Who is, I know the basics, I know what a Tardis is, things like that, but I'm not a massive fan of the show who memorized everything and knows every Doctor by name and knows all the different companions and all the locations, but I still found it entertaining. I might not know the lore and the stories behind the various locations that came up, and that's okay. The game plays fine without it. It's perfectly playable and enjoyable without it. That said, all of the artwork on the cards is from episodes of the show, and I'm sure if you're a fan of the show, they're going to bring back nostalgia, or at least bring up discussions and things about the various episodes. I've played other games with a similar type theme that are based on a show that I do like, and I know how that adds to a game for me. The big thing here, though, is even as not a fan, I can understand the game, I can play the game, and I get it. It's not one of those things that's exclusive, that if you don't know the game or know the source material, you're not going to enjoy the game. And I think that's got a lot going for it, and the fact that you can play this with somebody like me who isn't a huge fan, and they will still be able to understand and enjoy and follow the game. And that's honestly a big selling point to me for something like this. That's not necessarily something out. It's something out of my normal wheelhouse now. I'm a big sci-fi guy, and I normally play all kinds of sci-fi games, so that part is in my wheelhouse. But the Doctor Who theme itself is just not my thing. I understand it, and I know there's tons of people out there who love it. More power to you. And I think if you're a fan, you're definitely going to enjoy the game. And even if you're not a fan, if somebody asks you to play it, then I think you're going to still enjoy it and have a fun time, even though you might not get all of the references. But anyway, that is going to wrap it up for our look at Doctor Who Time of the Daleks, the second edition reprint here, and I hope it helps you get a feel for things, and if you're a fan of the old one, post down below if anything else has changed other than the Doctor selection. And again, I'm not sure who all was in the first one, but I know the 13th Doctor wasn't in the first one. So, and yeah, post your comments and questions down below. I'll do my best to answer them. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.